Good morning, everybody. My name is Melissa Maloney. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my privilege to be the Vice President of TechAlliance and to bring all of us together here today. To start, we just would like to start with saying that we do have a deep sense of gratitude and respect for this land, waters, and resources protected by the Indigenous people for centuries. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lapani, as well as the Chongton people. It is imperative to honor all of the original peoples of Turtle Island and to recognize the trauma, genocide, and history of Indigenous peoples. At TechAlliance, we remain individually and collectively committed to the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We will work alongside all allies and Indigenous-led businesses to advance prosperity for the region's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. Be informed, speak up, take action. Only then will reconciliation happen. TechAlliance empowers world-class ventures and fuels growth in Canada's innovation economy. We champion and coach entrepreneurs, amplify and impact businesses, and contribute to a bold technology community across the region. We are the place for dreamers, innovators, and world-changing ideas. In pursuit of creating spaces where innovation thrives, we must act, be bold, and lift others as we rise together. If you'd like to engage with our venture growth team, read stories about innovation that is shaping our community in the London and greater area, and with world-changing ideas, or join others in our upcoming experiences, I invite you to subscribe to our newsletter using the link that is going to get dropped in the chat. And you can connect with us on socials and our newsletter. Both ways are great ways to get us. We will also drop all of our social links in the chat so that you can grab those as well. Before we get the session started, a few housekeeping points. So you know, all of the microphones are muted, so relax, enjoy, and just take in the information that's going to be shared with you. Today's session will be recorded and available for replay on our YouTube channel. I encourage you to add any questions that you have to the Q&A feature that is at the bottom of your screen, or any comments in the active chat. If you have questions and drop them in the Q&A, I will be able to then ask them of our speakers for the day. So to keep the conversation going and to start us off, if everyone could take 2 seconds to just pop into the chat and say, what are you hoping to learn today? Because if it's not in our questions, then maybe we can throw that in still. So take 2 seconds, throw in the chat, what are you hoping to learn today? So we understand that finding the right job after graduation can be stressful, frightening, intimidating, all of those things. And that's why we wanted to host this for everybody today. We are bringing together industry experts and leaders to share their best tricks, their insights, and their knowledge to make your profile and you stand out among a pool of candidates. I'm really happy to introduce today's panel of tech leaders from growing Canadian companies and our local in-house writer and resume expert. So the first person who I'd like to introduce is Aaron Finkenzeller. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Interval and carries a long resume of amazing experience in the tech world in this area. Charlene Sebastian, who is the Vice President of Success and Strategic Partnerships at Minerve AI, as well as, and she is also a growth coach with us. And many of you may know her because she's also involved at the college. So this is lots of hats for Charlene. And then also James Paul, who is the Chief Writer and Editor at JP Wrightley. And what we're going to do is we're going to really take a look at things that employers are looking for when they're hiring a new team member, keys to successful resume writing and cover letter, and how to ace an interview for your next big opportunity. So we're going to try and cover off sort of all of those things. But like I said, questions, throw them in the chat. We want this to be engaging and for you to get what you're looking for out of it. So to start off, I'm going to have each of our panelists just give you a quick rundown of who they are, a little bit on them, why they're here, why they want to help, and anything else that they think is important for you to know off the top. So, Aaron, I will start with you, if that is okay. If you want to give a little rundown.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. Aaron Fingenzeller, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Interval. We help business owners and the financial advisors they work with kind of get together and have a productive, meaningful conversation about how to improve their businesses. I got into tech as a biologist, so I definitely didn't have a straight career path into this, but I really enjoyed it as a developer and now as a manager and leader, and it's been a kind of exciting ride. So I'm really happy to talk to you guys about that and kind of what it looks like when you're hiring.
Awesome. And I think Aaron's such a great addition to the panel because he is the person who's hiring a lot of people into the tech roles right now. So he can speak from that firsthand hiring experience for sure. Awesome. Charlene, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a great introduction, Melissa. It's definitely a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So in terms of my background and what I focus on, I've been involved in multiple career changes over my life. I started in telecom, moved over into financial services, and made a huge career change in the middle, going from really the sales environment and having a BA in political science from the University of Western to going through into the college streaming and developing a career in technology, where I've stayed ever since. And now I'm working with Minerva AI, as you mentioned, working with customers, working with tech, and doing all kinds of things.
Awesome. Thank you. And James, if you would like to go next.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for the intro, and thank you for having me. I'm James Paul. I started running JP Writely about 5 years ago on my own. It's a freelance editing and writing business, and I'm also a resume writer. I got my start just out of university. I went to Western for MIT, and I got my first job at Canada Newswire, which is Canada's largest newswire service. There, I started in client services and then went into editing. So I was editing hundreds of press releases a year. So I probably edited thousands over my career. And then after that, I moved to London and worked for Good Life head office in communications, but decided to go out on my own. And I've been doing that for about 5 years. So I'll hopefully give you guys some tips on what to do with your resumes and cover letters going forward.
Awesome. Great. So we've got some really good engagement in the chat already in terms of what people are looking for. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep an eye on that as people answer questions as well to make sure that we can try and touch on those things for you. So let's get ourselves started with some questions. So I'm going to start with Aaron. So Aaron, the first question we had for you was, how should prospective employees, so all of these amazing people on the call, prepare for interviews so that they stand out? And what would you say employers are looking for in the tech market right now? It's a loaded question.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, preparation's key when you're going into an interview. There are a lot of different websites and things that have, the 300 most commonly asked questions. It's not a bad idea to look at those, but like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little more of an introvert. I get a little nervous. And I find that I can't memorize 300 answers to questions and have, some of them sound a little bit trite. You want to be authentic. You want to be you. I tend to approach it like this. I try and come up with 3 or 4 major things that I've done, experiences I've had that capture a couple different sort of things that would revolve around a question like, what's your most difficult thing you faced in a job or challenge and this kind of thing. And then you've got an experience you can talk about and relate when they ask a question. So rather than having this pat answer fixed to a question, you can talk about a time when it happened to you, when you had a difficult conversation with a peer, when you struggled to get definition around something. And you don't have to memorize them all. You just have a couple of experiences that you can relate to those things. It really does help get the nerves out of it a little bit. And then you still need to look at the kinds of questions people ask, but I think it's important to try and take a more general approach because they're always going to have a question you didn't prepare. guaranteed. In terms of like standing out and what we're looking for from a tech perspective in a market, a lot of it is you have to almost stalk your targets a little bit. You can look at the technology they use. All those people are on LinkedIn. You can check out the events they go to, the things they post, get to understand it. And look, if it's not a fit, you're going to struggle. But you want to try and find places where you've got some kind of alignment with. Right now, it's so easy to apply to jobs that you get a lot of people who apply who maybe aren't necessarily a fit. And that employer wants to find you. You are the fit. You got to make it easy for them. So putting up some kind of a red flag that says, maybe a red flag's a green flag that says,
Green
look,
flag.
I'm fit for you. Trying to get that message across is hard. So anything you can do to make it easy for them to find you will help. And so that might be the kind of language you use in the resume and your cover letter. That might be the kind of volunteer work that you've done, or it might be just networking and talking to people who they know and getting even, credibility signals that you're the person they want to talk to.
Awesome. So to touch on sort of two of the things that Aaron sort of set up for us there, I'm going to go to James first and then to Charlene. So James, maybe this is a really good time for you to chat a little bit about some of those like really important do's and don'ts when it comes to resume writing and getting the resume noticed. And then Charlene, I'll flip to you to sort of tag in on the LinkedIn side in terms of like, how can we use LinkedIn as a tool, or is it an effective tool, or is there a different tool? So James, we'll throw to you first, and then I'll flip it over to Charlene.
Thanks, Melissa, and excellent points there by Aaron as well. With your resume, just at a service level, don't make it too complicated. You want an organized layout. You want the readability to be high. So don't include a lot of bullets either. I get some resumes that are just loaded with bullets, and you want to mix. Like, bullets are important, and I use them in all the resumes I create. But you don't want that to be your whole resume. You want to have it organized. Avoid flashy designs, because a lot of companies who are hiring, you have to go through an automated tracking system first. And if your resume has too much bolding, too many different fonts, photos, or just like a word mark in the background, it might not even make it through that automated tracking system. So keep it simple, because you want to get to that human who's going to be looking at your resume and reading it. So simple and organized. And another key is to use strong wording. So you want to use active verbs. So avoid responsible and regular words like that. Use achieve, I transformed, optimize, those types of words, active verbs. In terms of don'ts, don't use an unprofessional email address. Clean it up so it's your name dot last name at gmail.com, if that's what it is, just professional. I'll admit something here. When I got my first job, I'm lucky because my first Hotmail address that I used for my first real job out of university was jbot99, and just embarrassed by that. I don't know how I got through, but make it professional. You don't want to get snubbed before they even have looked at your resume, because email address is usually at the top with your name. They see that, they think you're not serious. So make sure you have a professional email address. Yeah, I think that's all for now.
Awesome. And I think to add to what James is saying about the email address, also one, I do think sometimes, because we know how busy Gmail is, sometimes you get into lots of letters and numbers and things like that. And so that can sometimes be complicated. And I would hate for something to not get to you because somebody transposed an email address wrong. So even looking at is it clear? Is it something that's going to be easy? So one of the things that we know is, and Aaron touched on it, Charlene, is the idea that we're in this world right now where so many people are applying for jobs. And so where it used to be, I can remember working in places and going, I need more resumes, I need more resumes. And now every job seems to get 1,000 resumes. And that's not making sorting through them and finding the great people easier. So Aaron kind of touched on LinkedIn. Charlene, what are your thoughts around LinkedIn? Do you think it's an effective tool? Is there anything else that you think the students should leverage?
Yeah, I think my answer is going to be, I think it really depends. I think there are different social platforms for different types of professions and industries that are more applicable to than others. So for example, if you are an entrepreneur or you are interested in small business marketing, etc., you might decide that you would choose something like Instagram over building a LinkedIn profile. If you are in, any of the professions, even, developer, all the way through to, marketing professionals wanting to work with medium and enterprise size firms, etc., LinkedIn is definitely a really great option. So I think what you want to do is have a multidisciplinary approach to social and have a good understanding of what socials are really relevant in your industry. Did you want me to elaborate more on LinkedIn, which is where I live, Melissa?
Yeah.
Sure. And I think that Aaron really identified it. And I wanted to go back on that. And I'm glad that you did as well, which is, and I'll give folks an example. So Minerva, we recently posted a client success management role in LinkedIn. Within a half a day, there were 186 resumes. Right? LinkedIn and digital platforms have made that so easy for you to be able to actually apply and do that. So here are a couple of things, and I'm going to kind of tier them out in a stepwise way for folks to think about. The adage, who you know or leveraging your network, I think really still applies, and even more now. And so when you are in school or in your co-ops, building relationships with other students, co-workers, your employer, and really harvesting those relationships above and beyond kind of the procedural day to day is really important, and making a good impression counts. Embedding yourself in volunteer aspects of work to help gain experience and expand your network is also really important. And that can be done virtually as well. So it doesn't necessarily need to be localized to your specific community. It's about going out there, understanding where does your profession live? Where do folks that look like you or who you want to be, where do they live and play? When it comes to LinkedIn, standing out is key. There are options for you to customize your LinkedIn link. So mine has had a few renditions in the past. Now it's simple. It's Charlene Sebastian. So make it easy for people to find you. You can actually customize your profile with your own brand tagline or an image in the background if you like. And then I think the other thing, a couple more things and tactics that I think you can really use is doing some research on the organizations that you want to apply to. Follow them. You can take a look at the organizational structure of those firms. Do you know anyone or anyone who knows some of the folks that work there? And you can stay on top of job postings by following those firms. There are also groups in LinkedIn. So folks who are like-minded, either special interest or in your own professional career, and you can actually join those groups. And then I think the last thing would be to post, either reshare, always with, I would recommend with a positive spin, but add your own thoughts or your own expertise, even if you are in a junior role, looking up at an industry and giving your thoughts and your vision, and do that very consistently. Pick 2 days a week that you are going to be very disciplined in doing that. Repost in the groups. Folks will start to see you. And then as you build a network through that multi-tiered system, when you see a job posting, reach out to one of those contacts at that organization to ask them if they have any insight, if they happen to know the hiring manager, or could, potentially help you get recognized, just a little bit more easy, because there is a lot of competition out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlene. I'm going to flip to a couple of the questions that have come in because I think they kind of fit with this topic before we move too far. So James, if I come back to you quickly, for would you say that there is a certain type of resume that stands out, traditional versus graphic? I'm trying to think, I might actually flip the next part of this question to all of you. We're gonna shake it up. We'll all answer. In terms of what key skills do you feel like people should be highlighting on their resumes? And I know that that's going to be obviously different depending on each role that people are applying for, but are there certain things, maybe Erin and Charlene, that you're seeing are things that, you know, if you saw that on a resume, you'd be like, okay, I want to at least dig deeper into this. So why don't we start there? So James, resume format that would be preferred?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of templates out there. The way I structure mine, you start at the top, name, email address, city you're in. You don't have to go into your full address, just the city is fine. If you do have a LinkedIn profile, include that with the link to it there. Then you've got your resume title. So if you're applying for a client services position and you have experience, just write client services professional, that's your title. If it's for something that you haven't worked in before, but you have the skills for, it would be client services professional, or sorry, profile, because you have the profile for it, you haven't actually fit it. Then you can do your career summary, and even if you're coming out of school, you'll just have a paragraph of what you excelled at, what your skills are in paragraph form, and then you'll have your list of skills in bullet point form. So important things a lot of companies look for, just trying to be general here. You know, oral and written communications are huge. You got interpersonal relationships, your abilities to collaborate. So these are all like 1 and 2 word skills. So collaboration, oral, written communications can be another point, for example. And then coming out of, if you're coming out of school, you'll put your education first, education, training, certifications. If you do have any additional courses, include them. Anything that's related to what you're applying for. It shows initiative. It shows you really are into this and are passionate. So if you're on LinkedIn, plenty of free courses to use. You can sign up, put those in there. And then after that, your work experience, any volunteer work as well is important. And any awards or recognitions that you received, whether in your volunteer work experience or in your schooling. Note those, because they're definitely worth highlighting. You know, it's hard to brag about yourself sometimes, but this is your place to do it.
Get yourself noticed. Erin, are there any specific skills that you're really looking for, like across positions, or?
Typically, you know, when you post a job, I think you were talking about it before, Charlene, you know, having a couple hundred applicants, we run into the same thing. I think during COVID, when we put a job up, you know, you were begging people to apply. No one was changing. We had a back-end developer roll up in December, and I think we had 1,000 applicants in 48 hours. And it's so hard to go through all those. And so you have to look for something, and every single one of them has programming. Like in that case, we were looking for a Java developer, and every single applicant had that. And so what we were looking for were the skills that go around that. So if you're a developer and you're getting into a developer environment, or if you're not and you're supporting that group, almost all of them are working in Agile. So if they have some knowledge or expertise or certifications as a product owner or a Scrum Master, if they, everybody's using version control. If you've done, GitHub has a bunch of free search you can do as GitHub certifications, or Amazon for the cloud, or Google or something. It just shows that you're doing more than just what the every other grad has done as part of their program, and it kind of sets you aside a little bit, because otherwise it's very hard to choose. And we don't know what the fit looks like coming in. So we're looking for signals that you maybe have an interest. The other area that's you know, really big is contributing to, like, if you, especially in software, if you're already doing it on your own, if you have a GitHub profile, if you're contributing to an open source project, I don't have to guess if you're interested in programming or if you just want it as a day job. And so it's just one of those signals. Some of the best developers I picked up didn't go to school for it, but they're really passionate about it and they do it in their free time. And I'm not saying everybody should be working 100 hours a week doing that, but it's a way of putting up a signal that even if you're doing it for an hour a month, that you're involved and you actually like this field.
Great feedback. Charlene, what would you add to that? Anything that you would add?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned GitHub, Erin, as well. Actually, your GitHub profile, if you are a developer or interested in that, is also as important as your LinkedIn, right? It says a lot about you. And I think what I see most often, many of the folks that are going to school today aren't necessarily have experience in their field, their chosen field, the field that they actually want to get employed in when they leave school. I know in particular at Lambton, we are definitely creating the content around things that are meaningful in industry and that are relevant. And so, use your portfolio. And if you have a personal website or your LinkedIn, don't be afraid to use that or have that handy, when you're going through the interview process as well. And I think the other thing that I want to touch on that Erin mentioned earlier in terms of preparing for that interview, those 3 to 4 major experiences that you can kind of use across those multidimensional behavior and situational type questions are really important. And be sure you're answering the question directly. For many folks on the call today, English isn't necessarily your first language. Practice, practice, practice with a friend. I know that career services in our college and many of the other colleges offer some form of coaching. But what I find most often as an interviewer is that people answer everything but the actual question that I'm asking. So really, really practice and get yourself feeling comfortable with that.
One of the things that I used to teach as well for that, Charlene, I'm curious what you think, Charlene and Erin, about this, is I used to teach that you don't need to answer instantly, because I think sometimes we are so focused on answering the question that we just start talking, as opposed to like taking a second, repeating the question back, giving yourself some grounding to then go, okay, here's the example I think would best fit this, and actually taking a second to reflect. And I used to teach that. I'm not sure what you would both think in terms of interviewers, how you would feel if somebody actually just took a second to like compose and reflect before answering too quickly. Any thoughts on that?
I love it. I think it's a really great skill to master. And one of the other things that I'm watching my son go through this. He's in high school. He has very little experience, which translates to some of what the folks are facing here. You don't necessarily have experience in your field. You might get a question where you don't feel necessarily that your major experiences relate to that. It's okay to say hypothetically what you would do if faced with that situation, right? So it's okay to embellish that. Erin, over to you.
Gonna kind of agree with what you were saying there. I think, it's easy to ramble on with questions. I was working with a career coach a few years ago, and, he was saying, hey, one of the first questions that people are asking recently is, tell me about yourself. And the instinct is for people to ramble on about their life history, right? And you got to have like a very concise thing to answer the question in a way that means something for them. And it's very easy to wander and get into, oh, I like to play football on the weekends. And, like all of that is great if they play football too, but it doesn't help much otherwise. And so it's trying to keep it concise and to the point and focused. You got to have your elevator pitch down. And when it's relating your maybe one of your experiences to the question, you need to be very direct about answering it. A+. Like if you wander off and then the interview goes, I don't even know what the answer to that was. If they come away from it uncertain, you're not going to stand out. They're not going to want to call back. They want to have somebody that they can, how are you going to solve my problem for me directly? So you have to be very direct and specific.
Awesome. Okay, we're going panel team. We're completely off script because we got questions coming in, which is way more fun than scripting questions. So the next question that came in is, what advice would you give to international students who struggle to leverage their network? So how can they stand out? I've received, their feedback's been received from students that they find LinkedIn oversaturated. So any thoughts on, so I'm an international student, I don't have the connections here necessarily. Where do I start, or how do I still stand out? I don't know, Erin or Charlene, who wants to take that first? You might both have thoughts on that.
I can give it a try.
Okay.
The one thing I would say is find yourself a mentor. Go find somebody who is willing to, might be going, hey, will you be my mentor? Or might be just somebody you go, hey, can I get some advice from you? But like that person, once they give you advice, is now beholden to you to help you. It's a weird thing, right? But that's a great way to kind of start developing your network directly. And it might be a teacher at your school. It might be somebody at a business. I started doing a sport, and the guy who runs the club needed a hand with his computers. And I got sucked into that. It's like weird things that you can find places where you can start to build that network and that connection in your everyday life.
Awesome. Charlene, anything you'd add to that?
I want to make sure James has got some space as well. James, I'll offer that up, and then I do have something to add, but if you want to, because it sounds like you've got some.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of LinkedIn, I mean, just if you're not on it, obviously get on it, but find people in the niche you're looking for, comment, have some insightful thoughts on other people's posts that you want to be noticed by, and read their articles and just make a connection so that they've seen you on their posts and stuff, and then reach out to them so there's some familiarity there, so you're not just fully cold emailing them or messaging them on LinkedIn, so they know you. So try to establish relationships that way. It may take some time, but it'll pay off.
Yeah, and I would say to even add to what James said on that as well is if you reach out to somebody and they say no, reach out to somebody else. Like it's because I know I do my best to engage with as many people who connect with me as possible. And sometimes that engagement is me saying, I don't think I'm the right person who can help you, but I do my best to engage and to help. And I also sometimes have a period of time where I have 25 people message me all within 1 week, and I'm like, I can't do it all. So, but it's not because I don't want to. So sometimes it could be that you connect with somebody and they're just not the person who's gonna really help. But then there's lots of people like Erin and Charlene and myself and James who we're all here giving our time today because we see this as something important and something valuable, and we're definitely not alone. There's some great people out there who really do want to help. So if you reach out to the first person and get rejected, reach out to a couple more, because somebody will connect with you and engage. And then I would say honor and respect that relationship. In the sense, I often say we've got a great story. I often talk about a story that I had happen where, because I always say to people, if you want to come to a networking event with me, come on with me, I'll take you. I'll introduce you to people. Nobody takes me up on that though. It's everyone's like, okay, and then they never come. And I have somebody, might be on this call, behind the scenes, who did take me up on that and got hired from those conversations. So if somebody's saying, here's what you need to do, because for me, I'm not going to hand you my leads, but I'll take you to them. Come with me, I'll introduce you to them. So it's recognizing it might take some work, and it might be a little outside of your comfort zone. Erin talked about being an introvert, so it might be a little outside of your comfort zone, and James would say he is as well. And I dragged him with me to places too. But it's take advantage of the people, because there are people like me who love to be in rooms full of people. So find a couple of those and kind of connect on to them, because they'll drag you around if it's not your thing. Okay. Charlene, did you have more to add to that one, or are we good to flip to the next question?
Yeah, the only other thing that I would add to that is to increase your network, especially when you're a newcomer, either to the country or to even a new city or a new community, is really embracing volunteer work and putting that on your resume. and identifying if you've worked a number of hours there, the number of hours that you've actually done that. So it's not just, people realize it's not just, you know, a one-day event for a bicycle race. You were part of the planning committee. It involved 3 months of work, you know, 5 hours a week, and you were responsible for building out the schedule and making sure your portfolio, you save some of those assets, you know, where you can, or redact them if you need to, so that you have that in your portfolio. And of course, to your point, Melissa, building those relationships and honoring those relationships, getting to know folks just beyond the procedural, transactional nature of work, right? And again, yeah, building out the network that way.
Awesome. Okay, so our next question is, and to people who put stuff in the chat, I'm coming back to you, I promise. I started to go through the Q&A. I'll circle back to the chat questions. We love the engagement. This is good. So the Q&A question was, at the application stage, do you look at references? And is including references available upon request enough? Probably that one might be a relatively quick one. Aaron, James, you have a resume opinion on this?
Yeah, yes. So I don't know if I mentioned, but I did work for a resume company for the first 2 years when I was building JP Rightly. And one of the things they highlighted was, do not include the references upon request at the bottom. It's kind of a throwaway line. It doesn't really mean anything. If the company is interested in you and wants your references, they will ask you. So just don't bother with that.
Awesome. Charlene, Aaron, anything to add to that?
I totally agree.
I have a question for James on that topic. James, in your opinion, how relevant is the cover letter?
It's the controversial topic of the day.
Controversial cover letter.
It's a current HR controversy.
For all the resumes I write, I always include a cover letter for my clients. It's your kind of place to break free, tell a little bit more about yourself, you know, because the resume is kind of structured and more of a factual basis, and you can really customize your cover letter to the company that you're applying to. So, you know, you got to be looking at the company website, look at the job posting, look at what's highlighted, what's repeated, you know, and reflect that in your cover letter. And yeah, it just gives you more freedom. I think it's vital. From my success stories that I've had with my clients, you know, they usually mention the cover letter and how it kind of, you know, just gives you a chance to tell more about yourself.
You can also name drop connections too, right? Like if you've got some people you've talked to or know that work there, you can say, hey, you know, it just gets their attention a little more.
Excellent point. Yes.
Awesome. Going back to the references super quick for everybody, I would add to that is when you do get asked for references, make sure you talk to your references before you put them as references, because I can tell you as a hiring manager, too often I've called references and they have no idea and they're taken by surprise. And that doesn't help, because if as an employer, I have to now circle back, get another reference from you or something, it just takes more time. And I would never want that to be the reason why you're not selected, because somebody else moves faster. So check with people in advance. And I know sometimes it can feel tedious because you may have asked them 3 months ago, but just, hey, heads up, this is coming. Because I'm finding more, as somebody who gives a lot of references, that references are coming in writing more often now than they were before. It's a rare event I get a phone call. I typically get a document. And so if I'm not looking for that document, it could get lost in my email for a year. So tell me to look for the document if you're using somebody as a reference. So that would just be my reference tip, because it still happens more often than I would like. So okay, so this one might be a little bit different because it's pretty specific, but so we've got somebody who is looking to get into the business analyst side of our world. So what do you think, an HR manager would be looking for to have one business analyst stand out over another business analyst? Aaron, does this go back to what you were talking about before with sort of the skills that come around that?
From my perspective, at least, we're a bit of a smaller company. We're under 25 people. And so like for us, I think when we're looking at something like that, we're looking at it as, okay, you're going to be a BA. Do you have experience in the field we're in or an interest in it? Do you have some experience in the tangential skills that go with the people you'd be working with? Some of the, like, because we work with financial services, some of the best people we've hired as product owners, BAs, even developers had previously worked as financial people. And so it's like, that's like a light goes off, you know, because it's fit. We don't have to explain what a balance sheet is to them. And so it just makes it easier for them to kind of highlight on that initial part. So definitely like surrounding skills, if you can get them, some of them are, you know, you're not going to go out and become an accountant, but you might be able to go and do some very short-term small thing, which will highlight the fact that you're interested in that field or that area, or you can bring value to the ecosystem that you'd be a part of.
Awesome. Charlene, anything you'd add to that? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, yes, I think that that's a really great an important piece. Almost always when we're looking at business analyst skills, we're looking at correlation in industry. I think it's more challenging, obviously, if you're new to that or you want to make a step. I think what I would say about that is, again, where you can demonstrate on your own, either through your own volition, something you're working on through Git, something you're maybe doing on your own web page, or if you're an entrepreneur yourself, trying to correlate what you've done experientially to the role, I think is most important. I think it's harder, but it's definitely most important.
Awesome. I'm curious on thoughts, Charlene and Aaron, and James, if you might have to weigh in on this as well, just knowing your sort of history. Because we've got a lot of our participants asking about, you know, I'm new, I don't have experience, how do I stand out? And so I'm curious what the thoughts are around, like, you know, just getting into a company. And maybe that's that I'm not necessarily using the skills that I went to school for, but it's an industry I want to be in. And do you see there being value, say in getting, I'm just thinking of a local company here that will definitely need a developer at some point in time, but maybe they're hiring for an entry-level sales position right now, or a customer experience position right now. Would you recommend that there's value in just getting into somewhere that aligns with where you want to go, or really try and get into the position you went to school for? Like, I'm guessing from most of us on this call, none of us are in the field that we went to school for right now. So that's always, anytime I talk to students, I'm like, oh, don't worry, it'll all work out the way it's supposed to. But do you have thoughts around that at all?
I can go first.
Okay.
Yeah, so for example, my position I mentioned earlier with Canada Newswire, I wanted to get into news. I was possibly thinking about being a journalist, wanted to get into radio, sports radio. Accepting the job at Canada Newswire was just in client services. So I wasn't doing any editing. I was basically setting up a work order for where clients wanted to send their press release when they sent it out. So I worked in that position for a couple of years, and then I became an editor, and then senior editor, and then I was a manager where I managed people, and I still did my fair share of editing, but you know, I was doing only like our top clients editing their documents as well. So yeah, sometimes you gotta just get in, especially if you're struggling to get somewhere in the position that you want. You might have to work in a lower level position, but you're in there, and then you get to know people, you network, and then possibly get promoted, you know, moving on like that.
Charlene, Aaron, anything to add to that? Go ahead, Charlene.
Gosh, so many things that I'm thinking about. So kind of building a bit on that, but maybe not answering so directly, is not everything you want is going to be available in the channel that you want it. And I think, Melissa, you were really talking about that. We're where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there. When something is not available to you, there's another option, and that is make it yourself. And JP, I think that you've kind of traveled a bit down that path as well. So, you know, you went and explored different things to test and see if that would lead you to another path. And now you're working on your own. And so entrepreneurship has a lot of risk, but it also has a lot of reward, and there's a lot of supports out there to help you with that. So what my message is really is don't stay stagnant, don't get frustrated, don't get down, and where you can't find it, go and make it yourself.
Awesome.
I really like that. Yeah, it's another way to stand out when you're applying to. People see that and go, you started your own business, you did this on your own. Maybe it's just consulting. That's not for everybody either. And post-COVID, the other thing to really keep in mind is the world is available to you. There are lots of companies in really weird little places. And there are a lot of events that as students or new grads, you can get access to that, you know, typically charge a lot. I got to go to Web Summit last year. It was fantastic. We've got Collision going on in Toronto. There's lots of places you can go to meet interesting people. And most of those events, it's largely 20 to 50. The one in Portugal was 70,000 people. You're going to meet someone interesting and you're going to get a conversation going. I had someone from Latvia reach out to me about something they were able to help us with within our business. And I would have never met them otherwise. So, you know, don't have just a local view of it. There's a whole world of opportunities out there to get in a spot where maybe you wouldn't normally have been able to. And it might not be exactly what you wanted to do, but if you can find something that gives you that stepping stone, it's a way in.
Awesome. And it's all network, right? Like even if you work for a company like Aaron, I know you didn't get into detail about your history, but you've worked for at least 3 that I know of, very significant, impactful technology companies in this area. And so the fact that you have that history means you're connected to all of the people who've been within those organizations, and some of them quite large compared to where you are now. So that's a huge network of people that you're now connected to. So it is sort of the effect of when you're somewhere, you can then meet people who are another person. And it's that we always say in London that everyone's separated by like one person. I think it's
Everyone knows Melissa.
Everyone is connected through me. So
But though, right? Like if you work at a big employer and you get in there, it doesn't matter what you're doing. The people you meet there in a year's time, 2 years' time, are all going to move out and go into the ecosystem somewhere, and they'll bring you along.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to both what Aaron and Charlene said about entrepreneurship is one of the things that I hear from employers a lot as somebody who's trying to help employers fill spots is that they are looking for what would be deemed intrapreneurship skills. So those thinking skills that entrepreneurs have, the initiative, the creativity, the problem solving, the flexibility and adaptability, like those skills that are not necessarily taught in a course, but that you learn through doing, that those are things that a lot of employers are looking for. So if you start to play around with some of those skills as an entrepreneur, even if it's a bit of a side hustle while you're doing something that pays the bills, that's still, you're gaining those skills, which are skills that employers find really, really valuable. Sorry, I just had another question pop up. Okay, so one of the other questions that's come up is about co-op placements and the fact that there's obviously power in working somewhere as a co-op and then staying there because somebody will have learned their skills, experience, what they bring to the organization, but really struggling to get co-op placements. Erin and Charlene, in your experience, like what does it, why would you take a co-op? Why wouldn't you take a co-op? Do you have any feedback around how some of these participants could get internships? It's a loaded question, I know.
I'll jump in. So number one, definitely at Lambton, attend events like this to kind of understand what folks are looking for. Attend as many volunteer or job fairs as you can, as well. The co-op office, I know Kim is not with us today, Kim Aldridge. She services or supports my vertical in particular at the college in the PMLS, the project management discipline. They are very, very attuned to and constantly looking to make connections with employers. So definitely leverage as much as you can the resources that you have here. And then absolutely, it is your network. It is start early. Many of the folks going into the cohort in the summer have already been out there canvassing and looking, since December or January. Sometimes I think there can be a reluctance in co-op. Employers sometimes don't necessarily understand the types of roles that would suit a co-op, and not necessarily pure administrative roles, but something that gives them a bit of grit, but also isn't necessarily high risk, high stakes. So as a potential co-op incumbent, you might also want to, in your cover letter, outline the value of co-op and what you could bring to the table in terms of that experience for that employer and how you could make that easy for them.
Awesome. Erin, anything you'd add to that?
I mean, there's probably like 2 barriers to bringing in co-op opportunities in most organizations, and it's usually budget and it's time. The budget one you can't really solve, right? They either have it or they don't, and they're planning on it or they're not. The time one is the one, and I think, Charlene, you're kind of addressing that pretty directly too, is how do you fit in? What can you do for them? If you're coming in and saying, hey, I want to help you do this, but I have no skills or experience in it, and I don't know anything about your field or your company, it's unlikely they're going to want to commit the time to you because it's going to be a big lift. We were doing a data analytics project last summer, and I actually ended up getting a couple data analytics people from Ivy, master students that were at the end of their term doing a co-op. And it was great because they plugged right into what we needed to do. It was real world experience. And we didn't have to, they were great. They needed some time, but it wasn't like you were starting at zero. So some of it, I think, is just making sure you can translate what you can do for them so that they have a comfort level with how much time they'll need to invest to be able to support you. Because that's the biggest fear for me and for, I think, smaller places, is they may not have enough time to make sure you have a successful go.
Awesome. Okay, being conscious of time, we only have 2 minutes left. And for our panelists, we've asked one official question of each of you. And I'm not even going to ask any more because I've got 2 other questions we have to cover in the next 2 minutes. So James, I'm throwing this one to you because it's most in line with you. Do you think that there would be power in adding to the resume, I lost my question, but projects and like a profile on different things that have been done? Is that something that's getting more common on resume writing? Erin, is that something you look for? Maybe it could be to both of you.
Definitely. If you want to highlight your accomplishments, and if you could probably say that that's measurable, and that's one of the things you're looking for when you're describing your experience. You mentioned what you do in paragraph form, and then in your bullets you can mention, collaborated on this project, we achieved this much growth, or was able to produce this for us. Anything that you can measure. So if that project led to success in any way, definitely highlight that.
Awesome. Erin, would you say that having like a portfolio section on a resume is you like to see that?
Especially if it's passion projects. If it's something that I get the impression you're passionate about doing, it makes it really easy to look at it and go, oh, cool, they took this on. Even if it's a school project, it makes it easier to see you working for me.
Awesome. And Charlene, would you say that 2 to 3 rounds is still typical for number of interviews that somebody's going through?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in startup land, where, you know, things are traditionally faster, you may get them in successive order, but usually there is some form of multi-interview process. They want to make sure, I mean, the real purpose of it is to, you know, kind of validate and also make sure that you can work with or gel with different kinds of people.
Awesome. Okay, I hate to cut this off because there's still questions and I feel like we could probably talk for another hour, but it is the end. So I'm going to say this, all of us are on LinkedIn and you all know how to connect to TechAlliance. So if there's still questions that you feel like you need answers to, you have my commitment that if you get them to us at TechAlliance, I will get them to the people who can answer them and we'll get you some answers, okay? So connect with TechAlliance, and we will get those answers for you. On behalf of all of us, I want to send first off a huge thank you to our panelists today, Erin, Charlene, and James. You were absolutely fantastic. We could not have done our Tech Talent Exchange today without you, so thank you. On behalf of TechAlliance, everybody, thank you for joining us. Definitely check out other stuff that's coming up. If you are interested in tech events and experiences and networking, we do have lots of stuff. Our next big one is coming up in June for like one that's usually a couple hundred people. We'd love to have you. Oh, look at this. People are putting out LinkedIn links. I love it. So be sure to check out our events and our experiences calendar. We'd love to have you. We have dropped the link in there again for you in case you need it. And otherwise, everybody, thank you. Be safe, stay well, and take good care of yourself and each other. And we will talk to everybody again very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa and team. Honored to be here.
Thank you.